final thoughts, our final takes, kind of the last word, if you will, on what we believe is going to happen in week 2 of the college football season. Here's my first take for you. I think that Nico Iamaleava, we walk out of that game against NC State, we're like, yeah, he's the real deal. He's the real deal. And you say, well, it's only game 2. It's NC State. We'll see what Bama is. We'll see what Georgia. All true. All true. I'm not saying to give him the Heisman Trophy, but I think you get further validation of like, okay, this dude's going to be real good. Like Tennessee's going to be very 2022-ish with him at quarterback. The reason why I feel that way in this game, is it a road game? Not exactly, but it is in Charlotte. It's a neutral site. It'll be a big spot for him, biggest spot of his career. There's a lot of validating filters, I think, in play here. Really good defense against NC State. Historically, I expect no different in this game. A defense that I think will apply pressure, force him to operate under some duress. Like, we're going to see a little bit of metaphorical pressure for him, potentially literal pressure as well in terms of how they try to heat him up. Like, you get some pressure on a quarterback, you find out who he is. I think in this game, Nico will spin the rock like he did against Chattanooga. I think he goes for north of 270, potentially 300 yards if we're just going to go that specific. I think that his wide receivers will win for him as well. I've given my take on how they're going to eat in the RPO game against NC State. In this game, in this week, we get further validation that Nico Iamaleava is, in fact, him at Tennessee. Before we get to this next take, want to make sure y'all know that the Hard Count is brought to y'all by our friends over at Prize Picks. Daily fantasy made easy. If you want to tail us on this show, we got lineups for you. We'll give you a lineup actually a little bit later in this segment. One of those projections that we have on here is involving Nico Iamaleava and his pass yards, so stay tuned. Prize Picks, the way that it works, you pick 2 or more player projections, pick the more or less on there, you're off to the races, squeezing the juice out of your college football Saturday. Use code HARDCOUNT at prizepicks.com. When you play $5 in lineups, does not matter if you win or lose. You just play a $5 lineup, get yourself $50 in promo funds using code HARDCOUNT. Again, we're going to give you a lineup here in just a second, but would encourage you to lock in. It's a great time, and we want y'all on board here. It's also, just full transparency, a great way to support the show. They see people signing up with code HARDCOUNT. Vibes are good. They like us. We're rolling. The show's growing. All that. So we appreciate y'all for that. College football sickos, week 2 is here. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss a minute of the coverage we have for you on this show, The Hard Count, on this platform, the On3 YouTube channel. We appreciate you so much in advance for being subscribed. Now, Oregon. A lot of talk. I mean, they've kind of been a talking point for us since the Idaho game happened in terms of how much people have overreacted around them. It's pretty straightforward for me when it comes to Oregon. I think they just remind everyone that they're Oregon. Like everything we said about them during the offseason with, well, they're going to have a great offense and their defense and their roster and the Big Ten, all that. We just get validation in this game, I think. I think they'll score in the 40s. They scored 24 last week against Idaho. I promise you, Dan Lanning, I said it during an earlier segment, I would have to believe he has been on top of everyone in that building saying, hey, we gotta ratchet it up a notch here. We got to have a sense of urgency about ourselves. I think they played dominant matchup football against Boise State. I think they stopped the run effectively. Ashton Jeanty is through 1 week of college football, the best back in college football, so that'll be a good test for them. Dan Lanning having ammunition to get his guys correct is massive. We'll see Oregon back to what we expect Oregon to be, and I think that offense is humming. Now, I think Texas against Michigan, I think they have a little bit more success through the air than some people are expecting right now. Because Will Johnson, I think for a lot of people, myself included, is probably the best cornerback in college football. You could have a discussion around Benjamin Morrison, have a discussion around Denzel Burke at their respective spots at Notre Dame and Ohio State. But I feel like for Texas, the quantity of weapons they have, from a Ryan Wingo to a Matthew Golden to Isaiah Bond, I saw enough matchups won by Fresno State over Michigan last week to where I'm like, I think Texas could take advantage of a couple of those situations. I think Quinn Ewers could maybe put the ball where it needs to go if they're able to win in man coverage. I think that Steve Sarkisian games it up much like he did against Alabama, where they were having pre-snap movement. They're shifting at right before the snap and getting the defense discombobulated. I think Texas, through the air, will have a lot of success. Does Quinn Ewers throw for like 350 yards? I'm not so sure about that, but I do think you see a notable advantage for Texas on the perimeter against these Michigan defensive backs. So we got a Prize Picks play on that too in just a second here. Nebraska, I think they play clean football, which sounds sort of like, oh, that's great. Like, that's, usually what it takes to win a football game. But if you're a Nebraska fan, you're like, hallelujah. They were one of the worst teams in America last year when it came to turning the football over. They had a 6% interception rate. What that means, out of all the snaps that Nebraska took offensively, 6% of them was an interception. That's not even accounting for fumbles. And so with Dylan Raiola now playing quarterback, I think that when they play clean football and they have a guy at quarterback that can make the simple play, check it down, hit the intermediate pass game, when they overcommit to the run game, hit the deep pass game. If you're a Nebraska fan, you feel like, okay, like I said earlier, we're not crazy and we're not cursed. We had a take earlier from one of y'all that Nebraska wins this game definitively. I think it's a bit closer than that throughout this game. I think if you're Nebraska, you take a deep exhale after this game by winning a close game, and you lost 5 close games last year, you say, okay, we're not actually snake bitten. We're okay. This is a new leaf here at Nebraska under Matt Rule that we're turning, and the vibes are back high in Lincoln. Now, this is the last take I have for you, and this is kind of a fun one now. There's a game in the ACC this week that does not involve Clemson or Miami or Florida State. It might be the best game of the whole weekend, just pure entertainment value. I will always call it the Carrier Dome, just from living in upstate New York. I know they changed the name. I'm calling it the Carrier Dome. Georgia Tech goes to Syracuse, a ranked Georgia Tech, mind you, favored by 2.5 points. I think this is going to be awesome. You got 2 transfer quarterbacks, which is just the epitome of modern college football. Haynes King and Kyle McCord. You got Brent Key and Fran Brown. This is going to be a fun one. Again, I would recommend tuning into this game as much as you can. I believe it's a noon kick. That might be one of the best games of the whole afternoon. 2 ACC sleepers. I'm just telling you, entertainment value will be through the roof. That'll be a good time. Lock in over there. For the record, give me Syracuse in that game. And Kyle McCord and company getting it done. So we love that. Okay. So I promised you a Prize Picks play. Here's what I like for this weekend. I think that Nico Iamaleava, like I said, just drops the mic and has a tremendous game against NC State. I think his wide receivers win for him. I think they're able to create matchups to where those wide receivers do end up having a chance to win for him. I think the RPO game is just, cutting up like hibachi for them. I think that his passing yard total, which is down a few yards from yesterday, so keep an eye on this. Right now, it's at 253.5 through the air for Nico Iamaleava. I like the more there. So we'll pair that with Quinn Ewers and his passing yards. I told you, I think Texas and the quantity of weapons. Will Johnson can't cover everybody. I think that his passing yard total is too low as well. We'll take the more on 246.5 pass yards for him against Michigan. So I like both those to make a Prize Picks play. We'll take the more on both. If you want to sprinkle in one more square, Caleb Williams right now, half a passing yard throughout the month of September. Just a free square. Prize Picks is thrown out there for you. Use code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, $50 in promo funds. Let's lock in. Let's have a great time. Week 2 is here, baby. Let's get after it. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.